Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Denver, we need to talk, because what just happened at Broncos training camp is the kind of moment that makes you spill your coffee, rewind the clip 4 times, and scream at your phone screen like your team just won the Super Bowl. Jaylen Waddle went up in the air, snapped his hand out like he was starring in a highlight reel from another planet, and hauled in a one-handed catch so absurd that even the cameraman filming it seemed to forget how to hold the camera steady. And that is just the appetizer. By the time we are done today, you are going to hear about Evan Ingram quietly turning into a problem for opposing defenses. You are going to hear the real story behind Sean Payton and Drew Brees that blows up every lazy narrative the national media has been pushing. And you are going to hear about a trade market that is heating up around this Broncos roster in a way that should make every fan in this city absolutely giddy. So settle in, because this is a loaded one and there is no time to waste. Let's start with a moment that is breaking the internet in Broncos circles this week. Sean Payton has been telling anyone who will listen that Jaylen Waddle walks on water. That is not some throwaway line either. Anyone who watched Waddle during his years in Miami knows exactly what that means. But here in Denver, fans have been waiting and waiting and waiting to actually see it in a Broncos uniform. Well, the wait is over. Slow motion footage capturing the moment shows Waddle rising up and somehow corralling the football with the back of his hand. One hand, no help, no second hand coming in to bail him out. He could have gone up and made it a routine two-handed grab. Instead, he decided to make Broncos Country lose its collective mind with a one-handed snag that looked like something out of a video game glitch. Reports out of camp about his footwork have been glowing all off-season, and this catch is the proof in the pudding. This is not a guy easing into a new offense. This is a guy who looks like he has not missed a single beat. And here is why this matters so much for the Broncos this season. Sean Payton has wanted a true difference maker at wide receiver for a long time. The kind of player where you do not need some elaborate scheme dreamed up just to get him the ball. You simply throw it in his area, and if it is anywhere near his catch radius, he is coming down with it. That is exactly the kind of weapon Waddle brings to this offense. But the truly terrifying part for opposing defenses is not even the catch itself. It is what happens after the ball lands in his hands. Waddle's ability to turn a simple catch into an explosive gain is the missing ingredient this offense has needed. And pairing that kind of playmaking with a defense that is already considered one of the best units in the entire NFL is the type of combination that turns a good team into a legitimate contender. Even outside rating systems that tend to be stingy with the Broncos have this defense ranked as the second best in all of football, trailing only the Rams. Add a game-breaking receiver like Waddle into that mix, and you start to understand why the energy out of Denver right now feels different. Then there is Evan Ingram, who might be the most underappreciated storyline of training camp so far. Ingram has quietly been putting together some highlight reel moments of his own, including a gorgeous fingertip grab in the back of the end zone that showcased exactly the kind of hands and body control that made him a matchup nightmare earlier in his career. There is a pattern that Broncos fans have picked up on since Sean Payton arrived in Denver. Players sometimes seem to fade for a stretch, nobody quite knows why at the time, and then much later the real story comes out, usually involving an injury that was never fully disclosed in the moment. It would not be shocking if that turns out to be part of the Ingram story from last season, given the back injury that popped up around that Indianapolis game and the missed time that followed. But now, with a receiving room that includes Courtland Sutton and Jaylen Waddle drawing so much defensive attention, Ingram could be the player who benefits the most from all that gravity being pulled elsewhere. Defenses simply do not have enough eyes to cover everyone, and Ingram looks primed to make them pay for it. Now let's get into the story that has been dominating headlines out of camp, because this one is bigger than football. It is about Sean Payton, Drew Brees, and a narrative that the national media has been trying to sell for years that simply does not hold up anymore. A video surfaced showing the moment Drew Brees FaceTimed Sean Payton to ask him to be the one who presents him at his Hall of Fame induction. Watch that clip and you see Sean Payton, a man who does not exactly have a reputation for wearing his emotions on his sleeve, absolutely overcome, fighting back tears as he processes what he is being asked. Think about how big of a statement that is. Presenters at the Hall of Fame are usually family members, lifelong friends, or teammates who spent years in the trenches together. For Drew Brees to choose his head coach over everyone else in his life who could have filled that role says everything you need to know about the bond between those two men. This directly contradicts the version of Sean Payton that gets repeated across sports media. The idea that he is some kind of tyrant that players secretly dread playing for. Maybe that narrative got attached to him because of old controversies from his past, or maybe it is simply because Payton carries himself with such supreme confidence that people assume there must be friction underneath it. But when the actual evidence shows up, and it shows up in the form of one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history choosing him by name for the single most meaningful moment of his football life, that narrative does not have much left to stand on. During his press conference, Sean Payton fielded a wave of questions about Drew Brees, and one in particular should have every Broncos fan sitting up straight. He was asked directly about the similarities between Bo Nix and Drew Brees, and the answer was loaded with reasons for optimism. Start with the injury angle. When Drew Brees arrived fresh off being cut by his previous team, he was working his way back from a torn rotator cuff in his throwing shoulder, an injury that ends careers or permanently robs quarterbacks of their arm strength. Compare that to the ankle injury currently surrounding the conversation about Bo Nix, and it becomes clear these are not remotely equivalent situations. An ankle injury for a quarterback is a completely different animal than a shredded throwing shoulder. If Drew Brees could come back from that level of injury and go on to become the most accurate passer in NFL history, the idea that an ankle issue should define doubts about Bo Nix's trajectory looks pretty flimsy by comparison. There is also the story of just how much faith Sean Payton put into Drew Brees at the time, faith that most people forget was a real gamble. Drew Brees could have signed with a Hall of Fame caliber coach in Nick Saban, who was building something special with the Miami Dolphins at the time in a location that, let's be honest, sounds a lot more appealing than moving to a city recovering from a devastating hurricane. Yet Brees chose Sean Payton anyway, and Payton rewarded that trust with a fully guaranteed contract before Brees had proven anything in that new chapter of his career. Payton has even talked about how in those early days of training camp, Brees' throwing motion was so slow coming off that injury that you could actually read the commissioner's signature spinning on the football in real time. Payton would ask assistant coaches how long it would take before that signature stopped being visible, before the spin rate and velocity climbed back to where it needed to be. It did not take long. Sean Payton bet on a player and refused to blink, and it turned into one of the greatest coach-quarterback partnerships the league has ever seen. Beyond the recovery angle, Payton also pointed to the sheer accuracy and volume both quarterbacks produced at the college level. Drew Brees put up huge accuracy numbers at Purdue, while Bo Nix built an equally jaw-dropping URSM across his time at Oregon and Auburn. In fact, by certain measures, Bo Nix graded out as even more accurate in college than Brees did, and Brees went on to become the most accurate passer in NFL history. When the coach who has seen both of these quarterbacks up close describes them as sharing that same rare accuracy and the same natural leadership qualities, that is not empty praise. That is a coach who does not hand out comparisons lightly. On a lighter note, Sean Payton will be stepping away from the team for a single practice next week to attend the Hall of Fame induction ceremony honoring Drew Brees, with associate head coach Vance Joseph expected to run things in his absence. That should tell you something about the caliber of staff Sean Payton has built around himself. This is a coaching staff loaded with future head coaches around the league. The kind of depth chart of coaching talent that lets an organization function seamlessly even when the man at the top steps away for a day. Elsewhere at camp, there are a few storylines worth monitoring. Caleb Lawner has not been present through the start of camp, which is worth watching given how much buzz he generated during organized team activities. His absence is a mild concern for now, though there is no indication it is anything long-term. Meanwhile, Evan Ingram continues to trend upward, tight end Adam Troutman-style depth continues to round into shape, and the value of the team's earlier investment in drafting talent at multiple positions continues to look smart. Here is where things get really interesting from a roster-building perspective. The Broncos are staring down one of the best problems a franchise can have, which is simply too much talent to fit on one 53-man roster. Every single position group is going to require brutal decisions because you cannot keep every capable tight end, every talented wide receiver, and every promising edge rusher. Difficult roster cuts are coming, and that usually means opportunity for other teams around the league. Case in point, the Carolina Panthers have now suffered back-to-back gut punches, first losing a promising second-year edge rusher who already had 5 sacks to his name, and now dealing with the loss of a wide receiver they had big plans for. That opens the door for Denver to explore the trade market in a serious way, with a receiving room boasting names like Jaylen Waddle, Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, and Pat Bryant, and with an already dominant pass rush, the Broncos might have both the surplus at receiver and the trade chip at edge rusher to make Carolina an offer they cannot refuse. Losing 2 significant contributors in a single week has to have Carolina's front office searching for solutions, and Denver is positioned perfectly to capitalize. There is also real credit due to how Sean Payton has structured this early phase of training camp. Rather than throwing players straight into full-speed, full-field practices on day 1, the coaching staff eased the team in with red zone-focused work before gradually expanding the scope of practice each day. That kind of deliberate acclimation period matters more than people realize. Training camp injuries often happen because rookies and hungry veterans come out sprinting at top speed before their bodies are truly ready, and last season's unfortunate injury to a key defensive piece during a full-speed sprint drill is a reminder of exactly what can go wrong. A slower ramp-up should mean a healthier roster heading into the season, and that is exactly the kind of quiet, behind-the-scenes coaching decision that does not make headlines but absolutely shows up in the win column later. One more name to file away. A player brought into camp with special teams and punt return potential in mind, who turned heads by picking off a pass during 11-on-11 work and looking sharp on special teams as well. That kind of camp performance can quietly reshape a roster battle, and it raises an interesting question about just how deep this receiving room really goes and whether that depth could eventually make even a fan-favorite expendable if the trade return is significant enough. Nobody wants to see a popular playmaker dealt away, but when a roster is this deep, tough business decisions become part of the territory. So here is where that leaves things heading into the next stretch of training camp. Jaylen Waddle looks every bit like the missing piece this offense has needed for years. Evan Ingram is quietly building toward a breakout stretch that could make defenses pay dearly for focusing elsewhere. Sean Payton's reputation as some kind of difficult figure to play for just took a massive hit from the most credible source imaginable. One of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game choosing him for the single biggest honor of his career. And the roster is so deep that Denver might be in position to strengthen it even further through the trade market. All while a division rival continues to unravel. There is a lot to be excited about in Broncos Country right now, and this is only training camp. If this kind of in-depth, no-nonsense Broncos coverage is exactly what you have been looking for, do not scroll past without hitting that like button. Drop a comment with your thoughts on Waddle's one-handed grab or the Payton and Brees story. And make sure you are subscribed so you never miss a single update from Broncos as this training camp story continues to unfold.